So, are you a proponent of using the word nil in baseball? Is nil in
No,
the
no, no,
C? Okay, that's where you draw the line.
no. That's yeah, no. It's a different venue. It's a different sport. It's a different. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. You're a wanker if you use nil in
An F and wanker if you
in
use
F and
nil in
wanker.
baseball.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're at a baseball
So,
game and you say, "Hey, we're up 4-0," nah, you wanker.
welcome to Long Live Baseball, the podcast. If you like people getting together, talking baseball, general nonsense, and otherwise, anything otherwise, I'm not really plugging this into the SEO machine and saying, how can we get the most views on this channel? It's not really what it's about. But if you like it and you want to watch it, see, this is the weird place that I'm in with this channel. This is something I like to do. And if people want to watch it, great. If not, that's fine too, because I get to talk baseball with Mike Jones. And I don't know, do we need to re explain the premise of this show, Mike? Of how it's possible that a Chicago Cubs fan and a Cardinals fan would want to be in the same hemisphere together talking baseball, or what do we, or is
Well,
that, I don't know. I don't know
I
if
mean,
we
I
do
mean,
need.
ultimately, the thing about this show is that you and I became friends, and then at some point, it was like we started to talk about baseball, and
Mhm.
then we realized, oh crap, he's a Cardinals fan, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But then at
Yeah.
the same time, it was like, well, I suppose this friendship has gone on long enough that we can forgive that. And because it's the best rivalry in baseball, in all of baseball, um, because it is the best, it works. And if you've ever been to Wrigley Field or the Bush Stadium, is that what they call it now? Bush Stadium.
Yeah, the Bush Stadium 2, or is it? It's because it went Sportsman. Yeah, Bush 2.
Bush,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. And so, if you've ever been to either one of those places during a Cubs Cardinals, you will see a Cubs fan and a Cardinals fan sitting next to each other, enjoying each other's company. And so, yeah, it works, right? And then we decided, what we like doing this, and then you moved because we used to do this in a diner, right?
Yeah. Well, that was before the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to get together at the Hungry Bear in West Burlington. Is it in Burlington or West Burlington?
I,
Where's the city line?
it's a good question. I'm pretty sure it's in Burlington.
And why isn't there an East Burlington if there's a West Burlington?
Well, East Burlington, East Burlington is probably across the river, and
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah, I guess you can't go much further east, you know.
because you go, I mean, St. Louis, for example, you've got St. Louis, you've got East St. Louis, and it's across the river, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that's in Illinois, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's East
Yeah.
St. Louis, Illinois, which is interesting. Are there a lot of towns, cities nationwide that are split by a state line that have, I mean, outside of Missouri? Because you've also got Kansas City, Missouri,
Mhm. Mhm.
Kansas City, Kansas.
Yep.
So there's the trivia question for the day. What other cities are there in the United States that are split by state lines?
Hmm. Well, I wonder if Google would have the answer.
Google might have the answer. I don't know that we want to answer it. I mean, maybe our listeners will answer in the comments at some point.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. We're not live right now, by the way.
No, yeah,
Our
I realize that.
split.
That adds a different dynamic to our whole thing.
All right. So let me see. I just want to find out how many there are. One, two, two.
It's just
And
the two that we just mentioned.
no, it's if you want me to give the answer, I can. Technically, St. Louis is not one of them, by the way. So I guess St. Louis is not a part of Illinois.
East St.
Tech,
Louis is not a part of Illinois.
I guess not. I don't, this is what AI Google AI is telling me.
Interesting. I did not know.
So anyway, so Kansas City is obviously one.
Right.
and you would never get this in 1,000 years. It's the city is called Texarkana.
Yeah, Texarkana. Yeah,
Oh, maybe you would have gotten it. I wouldn't have got it, but it's at the
makes
border
sense.
of Arkansas and Texas.
That makes perfect sense.
So anyway, Texarkana. Yeah, wow. They literally just melted the two words together. Except why did they not? Why is it not Texas? Well, it's because of Texas. Duh. Texas.
Okay,
Texas.
now
Yeah.
according to Wikipedia, East St. Louis is a city in St. Clair County, Illinois, United States, directly across the Mississippi River from downtown St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, okay. Huh.
East St. Louis is in
Well,
the Metro East region of Southern Illinois.
interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
now that's Wikipedia. So
Cities. All right. Cities in 2 states. World Atlas. All right. So, oh, this doesn't necessarily say like. Okay. It doesn't necessarily. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're at the border or whatever. So, anyway, that is a nice aside. We answered our own trivia question. The worst tease in the history of teases. We
anywho,
we teased it and then we answered it. now I guess maybe we should talk about baseball. I don't know, but
sure.
the Cardinals. Let me give you the St. Louis Cardinals update for everybody who's paying attention.
This should be
Straight from John Mozeliak's desk. Let me see if I can pull up. Actually, he emailed me his schedule. Hold on. He emailed me his schedule the other day because we keep in touch. So
you and
yeah,
Mo,
me and Mo, we keep in touch. Let me just bring this up real quick. So here's his schedule that I found that he emailed me, and this is it. That's what he's doing. So he's like 7. You see how he starts really early.
all I see
He
is
gets into work.
impression. That's what I
Yeah, Cosby. This is Mo's schedule for the day.
stood in pretzel line.
That's what he's up to.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a jam-packed day.
It is. A
Yeah,
lot of
so
baseball I see in there. A lot of baseball.
yeah, and I need to do what I need to do, Mike.
Making moves.
What I need to do is I've always wanted to do Cardinals comedy. Like and I've always had this image of John Mozeliak at the trade deadline, like asleep, like off of a sugar high or something like that. Like exactly like Michael Scott in The Office,
Yeah.
where he's he just had too much sugar and he just crashes, and then it's 2:55 on the trade deadline, and he wakes up and he goes, "Oh crap, we need starting pitching. Let me make some phone calls real quick and see if we can make a trade happen."
Yeah.
Like it's because all these moves that I would say I have no idea, but I would venture to say that 90% of the Cardinals trades have been within the last 10 minutes of the trade deadline.
Uh-huh.
Like Jordan Montgomery
Mm-hmm.
For Harrison Bader was at the last minute. I want to say the left hand Quintana was at the last minute.
Yeah.
John Lester, when we traded for him, remember that? That was at the last minute. And
John
J.A.
Lester pitched for the Cardinals.
Yep, John Lester and J.A. Happ were at the last minute of the trade deadline.
When did Lester
I'm pretty
pitch
sure.
for the Cardinals? What year?
In 20, it was either 21 or 22.
Yeah.
I'd have to pull that up, but I think it was 21.
When you think about Lester pitching for the Cardinals in 2021, that'd be 5 years after he pitched for the Cubs in the World Series. And, you talk about the trade deadlines being last minute acquisitions and Mozeliak sleeping at the wheel. Yeah. And the Cardinals of recent years have had kind of it's kind of an MO of theirs to bring in or to hold on to for one more year, washed up. And not that John Lester was washed up when the Cardinals got him. I love John Lester. No shade to him. But let's just say maybe past their prime pitchers. How did Lester perform for the Cardinals?
I just pulled it up.
Yep.
12 starts.
Yep.
4.36 ERA.
Yeah.
Let's see, where's his win-loss? 4-1.
Yeah.
Win-loss record. Did give up 11 home runs in 66 innings pitched, which is not that's not great. So I mean, he was okay. I mean, ERA plus 90. So he was like an average pitcher, maybe a little bit below average.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. The Cardinals in recent years have relied on, not the dominant starting pitcher, but the starting pitcher that can eat innings. This is what was sold to the Cardinals fans last year with
Right.
I can't even. Kyle Gibbs. I blocked it out of my last year out of my memory. So the starting pitching, although starting pitching really wasn't terrible, it was average, maybe even a little bit below average if you look at the numbers. But Lance Lynn didn't really inspire much, optimism, and Kyle Gibson was okay, but those were guys that were not top of the line, starting rotation pieces. And I think the Cardinals are realizing that when you don't handle your minor league system the right way, this is why what the Cubs are doing is so important. Because when you build up your farm system, the reason it's the most important thing is because not only do you get that talent pool, but you also have the option to trade some of those pieces away to get premier talent on your team. So it provides you the ultimate flexibility. And the ultimate travesty is that the Cardinals let that go by the wayside. And Katie Woo, obviously, if you're super plugged into the Cardinals, the fantastic reporting that Katie Woo's put in on that. So it's just really disappointing all the way around. And in recent years, and to your point, the Cardinals have just been overly reliant on nostalgia, on Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright, and bringing back Albert Pujols, and nobody could have predicted that magical season. And then you get two MVP caliber seasons from Goldschmidt and Arenado, and you have people like me, super fans that are thinking, oh my God, we have our 3-4 hitters in the lineup for the next 5 years in
Right.
Goldschmidt and Arenado, because you're thinking, especially in the case of Arenado, like, how can this go, or how can this not work out? And unfortunately, the Cardinals over the next couple of years got, above average play from him offensively. And now they're looking to trade him, and now it doesn't really look like they're going to trade him, because when do pitchers and catchers report? Like here in a couple weeks?
44 days until Cubs opening day in Tokyo. So,
Wow.
a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
pitchers and catchers report. I don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and this was always the problem with trading Arenado. As Mike Jones's camera takes a tumble there.
Yeah.
But the problem with trading Arenado is, one, he's owed a lot of money, and two, he's kind of an average player now. And you really need a team that believes that they can revitalize somebody who's, let's face it, on the wrong side of 30 years old and getting older, and not really looking like, it's not really looking great that he can get back that pull power that he once had, because that's what he relied on. He was never really a next gen stats, hard hit rate kind of guy. He was a guy who relied on being able to pull the ball to left field, and the power that came with that. And now he doesn't really do that as much anymore. So the Cardinals are in a bad spot because he's got a no trade clause too. And so I think if I can boil down the frustration the frustration of the inaction is, this is the ultimate opportunity to see what you have in some younger players. And it looks like the Cardinals are just kind of not making a choice, which it in itself is making a choice. So and Mozeliak is just sitting there, with his feet up on the desk with his Cosby impression on his schedule. Wait, I don't know what and I say that in jest. I'm sure he's trying to work hard to make some of these moves. I guess I don't know, but it really feels like I don't know. I like this is like I said, this is the ultimate opportunity to figure out what you have in some of these guys, and are we really going to let another year go by without giving Quinn Matthews an opportunity, without giving Tink Hence an opportunity, without giving, Thomas Sajaci some time, not playing on the bench, playing, maybe second base or third base in a utility role. What's Nolan Gorman's role going to be? Because, is Jordan Walker going to play the outfield every day? What are you going to do with Alec Burleson? Like, there's so many questions that we don't have the answers to yet. We might not get the answers until opening day. We might not. We might not know, but I do know this: if you have Michaelis, Steven Matz, Sonny Gray. Obviously, Sonny Gray is going to stay, and that's fine. But if you have some of these older guys in the rotation, and if you have Nolan Arenado at third base, there's just not. I mean, it's the opposite problem that the Cubs have. It's like there's too many. We have too many roster cloggers here that
Right.
are getting in the way of what we really should be focused on, which is if this team's not going to be competitive, then we need to focus on the future and the future Cardinals teams that will be competitive. And it just like the Bernie Michaelis and Josh Jacobs, who do such a great job, they brought up the point, and I think Josh Jacobs, who is with the Dealing with the Cards podcast, and he does work with Fansided as well. He brought up the fact, and I didn't, it's one thing I didn't even really think about, and it's like, why didn't Michael McGreevy pitch last year? Especially when the Cardinals were out of it. Like, why didn't some of these younger players get more opportunities last year? And it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that's the Cardinals update, is like we're just kind of frustratingly middling when the path is clear to me, and the path is we should be trading Ryan Helsley, we should be trading Eric Fedde, we should be trading Nolan Arenado, even though that's probably the toughest piece to trade. We should probably be seeing like what can we get for Miles Michaelis, even though that's going to be who knows, maybe we get a ham sandwich and a cup of coffee for him, but
Or some
we need
pretzel.
to be
Maybe
or
that's
some.
why he was standing in the pretzel line. I mean,
Yeah. And so this frees up opportunities and payroll for next year. So this year you're going to figure out what you have, and next year you're going to know what you have, and you're going to have more money to spend, and hopefully you can turn this thing sooner rather than later. That's the hope. With a rebuilt farm system,
okay.
that's the direction I would go. Clearly, there's some people that disagree with me. Clearly, the Cardinals do not agree with me, which is not, which is pretty much par for the course. They never do anything I want them to do, so that's fine. But well, I
Yeah,
don't know. What are your thoughts here?
well, I mean, I find it very interesting. First of all, 7 days, 11 hours, 35 minutes, and 3 seconds until
Oh,
pitchers
there's a
and catchers
countdown.
report because the Cubs pitchers and catchers are going to report on February 9th, notably earlier than all the rest of the league because of their deal in Tokyo on March 18th against the Dodgers and the Ho Chi Minh, or that's the wrong city, but the Japanese teams that they're going to play. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but so that's coming fast. Like that's next weekend. That's the Sunday, the 9th is a week from tomorrow. So pitchers, catchers report on that day for the Cubs, and I imagine the Dodgers too, right? I mean, because they're also going over to play over there. But I find it interesting, Seth, that you're. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to hear kind of the panic in your voice about what's going on in St. Louis. Um,
Yeah.
but what's interesting to me is that when we look at the big picture here, and if I can ever get to it, okay, here we go. The Cardinals finished, if not for the alphabet, second in the National League Central last year. 10 games back, right? Mm-hmm. 10 games. Tied with the Cubs. Same identical records, second place. And I think somehow people forget that. And one of the things that you mentioned was, okay, farm system, bringing up, we've got to get that farm system going. Of course, that's been a real calling card for the Cubs, right? Like, they've been building up their farm system. They made these big trades, all that kind of stuff. One of the people that they did trade in order to build for this year was third baseman Cam Smith, who was a top 100 prospect, for Kyle Tucker. And I think that, I of course, you always hope this, but I hope they don't regret that trade, right? Years from now, because Cam Smith was a first round pick in 2024. And he was the highest ranked player in the farm system, right? Or I shouldn't say that. He was the highest ranked player who was moved during this offseason so far, right? They do know, of course, our Cubs do know that we've got some high-end talent there, in that position, knocking on the door. And even though the Cubs have, I think it's something like 5, let me see if I can find that number. Yeah, 5 players currently ranked in the top 100 on ESPN's list. The Cubs' value in their farm system has actually dropped in some rankings this year, which I find to be interesting. The ESPN list has them at number 10 now. Last year, they were 1, 2, 3, bouncing around in that area. And even with those 5 players in the top 100. So, I don't know where the Cardinals are on that list, nor do I care. But that there seems to be an overwhelming sense of hopefulness and positivity about where the Cubs are versus where the Cardinals are. And some of that has to do with farm system, some of the moves that we've made recently. But when you look back on last year, we tied. It was even records, right? So that dynamic is just interesting to me. There seems to be more woe is me in St. Louis from the perspective that I get about the Cardinals than there is in Chicago right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the direction of the organization, because I think, if you were to ask Cardinals fans a couple of years ago, and it's so funny how this stuff can flip in just a year or two. You know what I mean? Because I think 2 years ago, if I had brought up the standings, I'm pretty sure the Cubs were, like in a similar position to where the Cardinals are now. Like I'm sorting 2022 standings right now. The Cubs were in third place at 74 and 88. The Cardinals won the division that year, like we said, with a run differential at plus 135, which, for reference, was, let me just do some back of the napkin math here. It was 4th or 5th best in the National League. It was right on par with the Mets, who were plus 166. The Braves were plus 180. The Dodgers, of course, were plus 334, which, like, the Dodgers is a whole nother conversation that we could have, and it would be a good segment to talk about perhaps later in the show. But my general frustration with the Cardinals, and I think why the narrative is the way it is, and let's not mince words, it is a narrative, and I think your point is right. we don't necessarily know what's going to happen because the Cardinals have really only lost Paul Goldschmidt, and now they had the same record as the Cubs, but the Cubs obviously Kyle Tucker. They trade for Ryan Presley. The Cubs are making moves to improve their team, and it feels as though the Cardinals are standing pat or decreasing payroll and actively attempting to trade away players. So I think that has something to do with it. But I agree. I think this version of the Cardinals could win 80 games, like the 75, 80 game. You know what I mean? Like, and could fool some people, and I think they would be fooling some people into believing that this team could compete. And I just think over the last couple of years, the Cardinals' messaging has been absolutely awful because I think the Cubs, and in general, there's more hype around the Cubs, I think,
Right.
because Cubs, it's a bigger city, it's a bigger market. I think more headlines get posted. The Cubs get bigger headlines when they make moves for those reasons. But the Cardinals, like, they are when somebody tells you something, maybe you should mean what you say. And I think part of the reason Cardinals fans are frustrated is we've heard John Mozeliak say things like, "Oh yeah, we're going to increase payroll, we're going to increase spending," and then you increase it incrementally. Technically we did increase payroll, but that's not what everybody thought when you said we're going to increase payroll. When you say we're going to increase payroll, everybody thinks, "Oh, we're going to go out and sign, I don't know, a big name free agent,
Right.
or
Right.
at least be in the conversation to sign somebody who is actually going to make an impact, not
Right.
try to piece together." So it's things like that. It's Bill DeWitt saying, you can't really make that much money by owning a baseball team. Like, I'm sorry, like, those things matter, and I don't necessarily see the Cubs ownership and the Cubs brass making those PR mistakes. At least how I perceive those to be PR mistakes.
Yeah.
And in St. Louis, we're in this weird spot where it's John Mozeliak's last year, and everybody is sick of John Mozeliak. They kept the manager. Everybody is sick of Oli Marmol, even though he's probably very far down on my list of people to blame. Mozeliak being at the top, ownership being at the top. So I think all of those factors are thrown into this cocktail of blame,
Right. Right.
this cocktail of frustration and angst and just bitterness. And because the Cardinals are the Cardinals, and to steal a line from Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, the standard is the standard. Good enough is not good enough in St. Louis. Like, we are supposed to be perennial contenders, and this has not been our reality for the last several years. And why is that? You always look for somebody to blame, and when your messaging is bad, and when that guy who looks like a schmuck wearing a bow tie up there is saying, "Well, actually, if you really look at it, we have made a lot of efforts to improve this and that, and we feel like we have 8 starting pitchers. I don't know what you guys are talking about." Like, it's just this kowtowing and
Yeah.
talking down to the fans, and poor messaging, and things not working out the way that you would have liked them to, and all of it is the reason why we are feeling the way that we're feeling today, and the reason why the Cardinals are in the state that they are in today. Because let's face it, they've got a lot of work to do to rebuild this farm system that is near the bottom of the league right now. So
Yeah.
we'll
Now,
see.
so I take issue. First of all, you referred to him as a schmuck, and then you referenced a bow tie, and I take issue with the fact that you would be like comparing someone who wears a bow tie to a schmuck, because I
Yeah.
don't think that just by the sheer nature of wearing a bow tie you're a schmuck. In fact, I think bow ties are
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but schmuck he may be. Now
Mm-hmm.
that being said, the baseball stuff that you had, I think, was probably spot on, right? And maybe it has to do with the Cardinals PR team versus the Cubs PR team, because the big news in Chicago, outside of the two players that you mentioned, Kyle Tucker and Presley being signed, right? Both were both of them, though, after this 2025 campaign, are going to be free agents. And so we gave away Cam Smith, or we traded away Cam Smith for a couple of 1-year free agents. Is that a rental? I mean, at some way, you know, there's going to be some work to be done if those two are going to stick around. But then also at the end of this year for the Cubs, you've got Happ, Suzuki, Horner, and Tyon, who will be hitting the open market. So at some level for the Cubs, it feels like we're pushing all our chips in, trying to make this year a year, right? And for several years, since about 2018, 2019, somewhere in there, I've said that 2025 is going to be the next big Cubs season. Okay. I don't know if I've said that publicly on this show, but in my head, I've been thinking this year or next could be big years for the Cubs. Okay. Based on the fire sale and when all that happened. So, but back to the PR piece, you know, the Cubs make announcements like, look at our cool new uniforms based on the Blues history of Chicago. And everybody gets jacked up about them because they're drippy. They drip, they slap, as the new generation might say. See, I'm trying to keep up, trying to get our listeners, you know, the new generation. You do it with analytics, I do it with lingo. But you know, that big announcement, or the other big announcement is that now in the bleachers this year, there's been some construction going on at Wrigley Field, unbeknownst to those people outside of Chicago. They have a new section just above the batter's eye called the yard. The yard. And for a mere $1,900, you and 4 of your closest friends can eat, drink, and be merry above the batter's eye in the bleachers in center field over there at Wrigley Field. And those pieces of news, you know, okay, Kyle Tucker, big splash. Presley, big splash. The yard, the uniforms. Here we got something coming, right? So, you know, and maybe part of it is just PR, because it does feel like in St. Louis, well, you know, we're going to stand pat and we're going to press ahead. And there's not a lot of, like, you know, there's not a lot of excitement built around the things that are going on, while it feels like every year the Cubs are trying to build some excitement. And our ownership, as opposed to your ownership or GM, just frankly says we're not going to spend like the Dodgers. That's not how we're going to do it. We're just not going to do that. We're not going to, you know, have these outrageous payrolls that go above the tax, and you know, we're going to try to have winning baseball here in Chicago, and we're going to compete, and we're going to do it with, you know, players who we think are going to get that job done. And at the same time, we're going to have Cubs Con, and we're going to have, you know, the flashy stuff that is going to create excitement. Whereas in St. Louis, what's the last flashy thing that happened in St. Louis? Like Busch Stadium 2? Like
Albert coming back?
Macland? I mean,
yeah.
You know,
No, I think it's a good point. I do. And to be fair to St. Louis, I mean, Chicago and St. Louis Chicago is one of the biggest markets in America.
St. Louis has got the highest crime rate. And yeah, exactly. If we're going to compare, go ahead.
Well, okay. That's shot across the bow there, but whatever.
We're just comparing these two cities, you know, the large market and the small market.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's large versus small, but you threw me off there. Now I don't know what I'm gonna say. But
maybe you're going to talk about bow ties.
Yeah. Well, it's Yeah, it's all the things I said, Mike. It's having a certain level of expectation heading into every year, and over the last several years, having that expectation just completely crumble apart. For when the organization told you that, hey, we have this covered, don't worry. We've like and kind of having an air of arrogance about themselves as well. This doesn't help. Like, we're the St. Louis Cardinals. Of course we know more than you stupid fans. Of course. Like that doesn't help. I remember, and I whenever I bring up footage of the last time the Cardinals made it to the NLCS, I think they got swept by Washington. And I think that was 2019. And just go watch the press conference, or don't waste your time. The press conference that the Cardinals had after that season was very disappointing, and maybe a sign of what was to come, and like the mentality and the, like just the culture, that has been complacent over the last several years of, not staying on top of things, not having a pitching or what I'm going off the top of my head here, but not having a pitch. I can't think of the word, but they haven't stayed up to date with technology and with analytics and
Oh
advanced
yeah,
scouting the way that other teams have. And
like we've got the pitch lab,
the
right?
pitch lab,
Yeah, yeah.
that's what I meant to say. And so hopefully these are all things that Kyle Bloom is going to fix, because he's coming from an organization where he did do this. He rebuilt the farm system and did exactly what John Hendry wanted him to do over in Boston. But what absolutely, and again, to talk about PR, what absolutely destroyed Kyle Bloom's tenure in Boston was the fact that he had to trade away Mookie Betts. And not only did he have to trade away Mookie Betts, but he had to trade away Mookie Betts with absolutely no leverage whatsoever,
Yeah.
and a limited amount of teams that could, pay Mookie Betts, and probably a limited amount of teams where Mookie Betts would agree to a long-term contract, even if they
Yeah.
were willing to pay him. So again, that's just a horrible situation to be in, and I think St. Louis is a much better fit for somebody like Kyle Bloom than Boston, because like you said with the Cubs, I mean, the Cardinals are never going to be this team that spends. I don't think that they have never eclipsed 200 million in payroll.
Right.
Maybe that day's coming, but the Cardinals will never be this team that spends. I mean, they'll be maybe top 10 or 12, but they'll never be top 5, for example. Not anymore anyway, not in the current uh, you know, contract climate that we're in. It's ridiculous.
Speaking of that, here's my
Yeah.
question for you. Okay, they
Uh-huh.
haven't yet, you said. So here's my question. In Major League Baseball, when you have teams such as, and maybe this will be our next discussion point, but when you have teams like the Yankees, you have teams like the Dodgers, you have teams like the Mets, um, will it become a necessity? What's going to happen first? Are other teams going to, is it just going to get outrageous and we're going to have the haves and the have-nots to the nth degree, like we're starting to see now, in my opinion, with the Dodgers and the Mets and, how those things are going? Or are we going to get a salary cap? Are we going to get some sort of control on the outrageous spending that you're talking about?
I think they're going to have to. And I know the players union is like probably not going to like this because they're liking all of these massive contracts, but
And
and
why would
and
they
I'm
want?
not an I'm not yeah, exactly. I'm not an expert on this in any sense of the word. I just pay attention to the news and what people are saying, but my understanding is that the CBA, when it runs out in 2026, there's a good chance that there's a lockout because of the issue you just brought up, because this is a major point of contention with the Players Association and the league, because I've always said that from just a competitive standpoint, I don't understand why you don't have a salary cap and a salary floor like they do in the NFL. And I don't know maybe if the toothpaste is out of the tube, and if somebody wants to comment on this that knows more than I do about it, feel free. That has a background in contract law, that is an agent, that has an understanding of how these negotiations work, because I am just an idiot on a couch talking into a microphone because I love to watch baseball
Wait, are you
with a layman's understanding of how all this stuff works. But I will say this, it makes too much sense to somebody like me for that to be the way that baseball works, because we all know that baseball is not as popular as football. We all know that there are, entering into the season, half the league is not going to be competitive. And maybe some people feel similarly in the NFL as well, but at least there is the thought or the idea behind every team that, okay, they have to spend this much. Nobody can go above this amount. The team that, is the worst in the league picks first every year. There's so much that the NFL does to try to balance out and make everything fair and make everything flip, like
right?
make everything like you can go from worst to first in the NFL very easily. It doesn't work that way in baseball because obviously there's a minor league system and it takes players longer to develop in baseball than it does in the NFL. And that's always going to be true to a certain extent. But I don't think from a fan perspective, and that's how I'm coming at this, it hurts us to force teams to spend a little bit of that money, and if I'm the Cleveland, and from the team's perspective, if I'm the Cleveland Guardians or if I'm the Royals, and I know the Royals, maybe that's a bad example because the Royals have spent more money recently, but if I'm one of these teams near the bottom in payroll, and I think the Guardians are a perfect example, and you're making the playoffs, you're probably thinking, why would we spend money? Why would I go overspend on a 30-year-old player who might be good, who might not be good, who might help us, who might not, when we are so good at churning out these prospects year after year after year that we'll just, we'll keep some of these guys, but once it comes time for somebody to make an amount of money that we're not comfortable spending, yeah, we're going to trade them and we're going to get more prospects and we're going to keep this machine going, So I understand it from both sides, but from a fan's perspective, it's always been my opinion that you should have a salary cap and a salary floor to push some of these teams like the Pirates and some of these teams at the bottom who never spend any money to actually be an active participant in the league, because it really feels like, and I guess the Cardinals are in this category this year, that a lot of these teams just kind of sit on their hands and go, well, we're not going to spend that much for him. Nope, not going to do it. And there's obviously a conversation to be had there, but what do you think of all that? Like, what's your take on it?
Well, I mean, you mentioned that the NFL and the NHL is another example of a league that has a salary cap, right? And of course the Players Association has been, I mean, I think it's one of their proudest things, like that they don't have a salary cap is something that is a major deal for them, right? But when you look at the NFL and the NHL, has the salary cap really made a difference in those leagues? I mean, has it really? Who has won the Super Bowl out of the last 5 years? Who's won the Super Bowl?
Well, the Chiefs, yeah, the
Right?
Chiefs.
Like,
They
yeah,
call it the Arrow. They call it the Arrowhead Invitational for a reason. The
yeah,
AFC Championship game.
right. And why is that what they call it in Kansas City?
Yeah. Welcome to the Arrowhead Invitational, because I think 6 out of the last 7 years it's been in Kansas City.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you look at that in the big picture, who's the most recent repeat World Series winner? Like it's not like there's now. I think arguably the Dodgers are going to be contenders for a long, long time. That there's a possibility for that. But
Yeah.
when you look at the salary cap in the NFL, and you've got repeat champions every year, is it really making a competitive difference for that league? And the NHL, I'm not as familiar with in terms of how it's impacted them, but in the big picture, I don't feel like you see, a lot of there are teams in the NHL that nobody knows who they are because they're just not postseason teams, right? There are perennial postseason teams in the NHL as well, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that, because the argument for the salary cap, or at least one of the arguments for the salary cap, is that it's going to level the playing field, right?
Yeah.
Then we're going to have better, and the reality is that it hasn't in those other leagues, or at least it wouldn't seem to have. So I don't know, if in the big picture, because baseball's so different, you also don't see, Congress getting involved with NFL matters and things of that nature. But maybe because it's so different in that regard, you just aren't going to see that become part of what's happening. And I would hate to see a lockout, especially right now, at least in the Cubs world, because anytime you're not playing baseball, we both know that because we see these players. You said, 30 something, and sometimes 30 something means that's baseball's over for you, right? Like,
Yeah.
35, 37, you don't see too many Tom Brady's lingering around the baseball field, still getting the job done. Um, and so I'm not exactly sure what my point was there, except that when a lockout, yeah. So when a lockout happens, or when COVID happens, when those types of things happen, you've got players who are using years that are very valuable years. And I just hate to see that happen. Not only for the fans, but for the players themselves. Like, do you really want to go to bat for another couple $1 million? Uh, and when it means that you're not playing the sport that you love, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I
Yeah.
so
Yeah. So
whether or not there should be a salary cap, ultimately your question, how do I feel about it? I guess it's worked in baseball for a long time not to have one.
yeah.
Um, and you can have a team that surprises people, you know, in baseball, I think still. So I don't know that it levels the playing field.
Yeah. And to your point, the last 5 years, I'll just go back five. Maybe we'll go back 10. But the last 5 years, Super Bowl champions: Chiefs, Buccaneers, Rams, Chiefs, and Chiefs. So 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls, the Chiefs have won. If you go back 5 years in baseball,
No,
back to 20.
it's been
What?
25 years since there's been a repeat champion in baseball.
Okay. Well, baseball, since 2020, Dodgers in 2020, Braves, Astros, Rangers, and Dodgers. And it would be interesting to go back and see which teams made the playoffs over the last 10 years. But if you go back clear to, I guess, 2015, so this would be the last 10 years: Royals, Cubs, Astros, Red Sox, Nationals, Dodgers, Braves, Astros, Rangers, Dodgers. So you're seeing the Dodgers in there, obviously the Astros, the Cubs and the Royals had one-off championships. The Braves had a one-off, but I would say too, there's a lot of teams in there, and maybe the Royals are the exception, and maybe the Cubs are the exception, that have been successful for a long time. I know the Nationals haven't been good recently, but they are an up and coming team with a lot of young talent, and should be a lot better this year. So
Well,
again, we'll.
That's interesting because you mentioned the playoffs,
Hmm.
and the other thing that baseball has done to try to level the playing field is they've expanded the playoff picture, right? Because
Hmm.
now you've got teams that, even though they might not be winning a division, they get that wild card in there, and that's something I think they stole from other leagues too. But
Yep.
that works to level the playing field as well. Without having to rely on a salary cap. So it's not like Major League Baseball's not doing things to try to level things out. But, um, again, you're not seeing that repeat champion. So I don't know how much of a push there will be for it.
Yeah, and everything that I hear too from people that, like David Kaplan, who's ESPN 1000, and some other prominent people who are pretty plugged in, think that there's going to be a strike.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll hopefully that doesn't happen, because obviously that we
This
almost
season?
we almost no in
Yeah,
2026,
yeah,
like when the CBA is
yeah.
up. Because you also have the issue too from a player's perspective of arbitration and team control, and a lot of these players, if you get up to the major leagues at 21, 22 years old, you don't get a contract for 5 or 6 years, and then you're like 27, 28, and that's probably best case scenario. The Cubs famously did this with Chris Bryant, kept him in the minors for more time than he probably should have been there, so he could get another
Mm-hmm.
year of control. It's smart to do. You run the risk of pissing off your player,
Mm-hmm.
but it's smart from a business
The
perspective.
business
So,
move. Yeah.
so that's there's that to consider too, and there's a whole bevy of issues as well. I'm sure that are gonna, because I have this article I pulled up from Baseball America, and it just goes into detail, and I'll link it in the description of the last CBA and what potentially could be at stake in this upcoming CBA. And I was hoping I could just you know pull up some I guess some blurbs from it or some sections from it, but it's a very detailed and thorough article. So I'll probably just link it in the description. But it is, it is an interesting conversation to have, and it's obviously it's going to affect the game going forward. But I still maintain that it wouldn't hurt to force some of these teams to spend some money. But then on the other side of that argument is, okay, spending money for the sake of spending money, you know, is that really going to help you in the long run? And teams like the Cleveland Guardians would probably tell you, no, it doesn't make any sense for us to do that. We're as successful as we're going to be because we're never going to be, the Dodgers. And of course, the salary cap would also limit the Dodgers and force
Well,
them to to rein in a little bit, and even the playing field there. So that's another side to it as well.
Well, I think you're going to see growing more and more growing resentment of the Dodgers and the Mets and their ability just to spend through the roof, and that's what's going to make it. That's when the owners are going to come in and they're going to go, "Hey, we listen. They're going to propose it again, right? Like we need a salary cap." Um,
Yeah.
and but it probably is just a colossal waste of time because I think the Players Association is just they are going to say no to that all day long, and I don't think that you'll ever end up getting anywhere with it in baseball. At least it doesn't seem that that's the case, right? But what the Dodgers and the Mets are doing, I think, is going to drive that narrative, and um, they're going to continue to make a lot of people angry, right? I mean, these are the kinds of things I think that back in the day caused different leagues to start up and different divisions to be made. These kinds of arguments, because if you're a Pittsburgh or if you're an Anaheim or you're I'm just trying to think of some teams that have struggled to compete even with good players like Skeens and Trout and even Otani, right? If you're those kinds of teams, why would you not start to go, you know what? We're or St. Louis, for example, hey, we're never going to be able to compete monetarily with the Dodgers, so we're going to branch out. I don't know what the agreements are. Like, it's happened in the past, right? History of baseball, those kinds of things have happened. I don't know if baseball teams can just say, yeah, we're out, of the league.
There's too much money to be made from profit sharing and all that stuff. But
Right.
I do think what you're saying is interesting, and I think because I have I think this is going to be a good segment for us to talk about. Are the Dodgers ruining baseball? Because this is the conversation a lot of people are having.
Right.
Because I just have the Dodgers roster pulled up and the Cardinals roster pulled up, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go through the Dodgers roster. And it's interesting to see because a lot of these players, because the Dodgers do have a really good farm system, but just looking at who's on their major league roster, it is fascinating to see that there are two players, and one of the players was a Japanese player that they signed this year or purchased his contract or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case may be. So essentially, one player that came up through the Dodgers organization is projected to be in their starting lineup versus right-handed pitchers, and that would be Will Smith, the catcher.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, I mean, and this is just, I mean, this may as well be an all-star team. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Tommy, who signed as a free agent this year, Tommy Edman, who the Cardinals traded them, and Haesung Kim, who they signed out of the KBO. And then you go to their starting pitching rotation. Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, and Rocky Sasaki, who they, again, signed from Japan. And then you go to their bullpen, Tanner Scott, who they signed as a free agent this year, Kirby Yates, who they signed as a free agent this year, Blake Trinan, Michael Kopech, who they traded for last year. So they are as loaded as I've ever seen a team
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
and obviously spending an immense amount of money to make this happen. So, and then when you compare that to the Cardinals, really the Cardinals, it's their starting pitching that they don't have any homegrown talent other than Andre Palante. But outside of that, it's a lot of players who came up with the Cardinals. And it's because, the Cardinals can't spend like the Dodgers can spend, obviously. So I pose the question to you, Mike. Are the Dodgers ruining baseball?
Yeah. Well, I think yes. Especially among the fan base, because the fan base is going to be, I think Major League Baseball saw an overall rise in attendance this past year and over the past couple years because of the balanced schedule, because of there's a number of things I imagine that go into that, right? But I think that the fans, if the Dodgers continue to just, do what they're doing, I think that the fans are going to say enough is enough. Like this is getting boring, and then they're going to start voting at the ticket office, and then that's going to drive some more discussions, right? But that'll probably be after 2026. I mean, if the Dodgers were to repeat this year as World Series champions, that will be the beginning of the conversation. There is talk about that the Dodgers, for this Japanese pitcher, that this was a deal that was done beforehand. I know there's been some sort of conversation around this that, there were a bunch of different names on the docket. The Cubs were included in that. The Cubs went out to LA to meet with him. Other teams went to LA to meet with him because that's where his agent is. But there's some, because like I just, there were posts, social media posts of people just losing their ever loving minds because of course he's going to the Dodgers. Where else would he go? The Dodgers get everybody, and that sentiment is continuing to grow, right? Amongst baseball fans. So I think that that's hurting baseball. Yes. Because if I want to go see a superstar as a baseball fan, let's just say I'm not a fanatic. Let's just say I enjoy going to baseball games. I don't really, my club's middle of the road or lower end of the division or whatever, but I like traveling around to ballparks and I want to see, great players play. Where do you go to see great players play? Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Will Smith. I mean, come on. Those names are all, any one of those names could go on the cover of the video game, right? I mean, that's not, it's pretty crazy what they've been able to do. Whereas if you were to go up to the run-of-the-mill fan and say to them, hey, who's going to be playing third base for the Chicago Cubs this year? Or first base for the Chicago Cubs this year? A lot of folks, they might not even be able to name our second baseman, right, by name. But they're going to be able to name almost every position player for the LA Dodgers, right? And I don't think that that's good for baseball in the big picture.
Yeah, and it comes back to our salary cap, salary floor discussion, because it's crazy to me that I'm looking at Spotrax or Spotrax or however you say it. Maybe somebody can teach me a pronunciation lesson. It strikes me as very. Oh man, I sorry. I'll have to edit that out. But it strikes me as very dystopian. Maybe that's too strong of a word. I don't know. That the Dodgers are spending over $300 million, $330 million. And to be fair, it's not just the Dodgers. The Phillies are spending close to $280 million. The Mets are spending $275 million. The Yankees, $273 million. The Blue Jays, $239 million. They just signed Max Scherzer, didn't they? And then there's kind of a drop off. Texas, $206 million. Houston, $202 million. That's kind of a surprise. But then you scroll all the way down, and you see the Miami Marlins, $43 million in total payroll.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Athletics, $54 million. White Sox, $61 million. Pittsburgh, $66 million. Tampa Bay, $72. Cleveland, $76. Washington, $83. Milwaukee, $99. Almost $100 million. The Reds, $100 million. So
almost more than $200,000 less than the Dodgers. What I say?
More than $250 million less. Yeah.
Jeez.
Like Elon could have donated his $250 million to the Miami Marlins to try to make them more competitive, and he couldn't, and he wouldn't have equaled what the Dodgers are spending.
Crazy
in payroll. So I think that, and I am going to take the other side of the argument, not because this is a Skip and Shannon thing, but this is the Dodgers playing the game the way the rules are set up.
Right.
Is okay. I can go over that luxury tax if I'm willing to pay the luxury tax, right? And I wish that my team was doing what the Dodgers are doing. Go sign. It's not my money. Go sign this guy. Go bring in this guy. Go bring in Shohei Ohtani. You don't think that the Cubs would have loved to have Shohei Ohtani or all these other superstars? Yeah. I mean, so the Dodgers are playing the game, and they realize, I believe, and this is part of my frustration with the Cardinals, is in the line and field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. And it's true. If you build a winning team, the fans will come and the money will come. And so I think what these smart owners are doing is they're realizing that this is an arms race at the top and if we have the money, if these billionaire owners have the money, I mean, $200 million, what's the fine for a luxury tax? And again, I'm an idiot on a couch just talking about this, but like, is it $10 million fine, $20 million fine, $30 million fine? I know it goes up every year,
Right.
but
So,
to some of these guys, that's a drop in the bucket, really.
yeah.
And so, like, and there's also the aspect. I mean, I think it was the Mets owner said, I don't really care if I make money on this team or not. Like, I want to win. And that's exactly the kind of mentality that I would love my ownership group to have. So they are playing the game the way that the rules are set up for them to play the game. You know, sure, do the Dodgers have a ton of advantages when it comes to location? Well, maybe not now, like with all the fires and I don't even know how that's affecting a lot of the players out there, and obviously that's a terrible situation. But historically speaking, geographically speaking, they have some advantages being in California. It's a nice place to live,
Oh,
competitive team.
yeah.
Like, they have all the advantages in the world. They've clearly invested in their infrastructure. They've put good people in place. So they're spending money and allocating their resources that are tremendously many, like plentiful, and they're putting it to work in good ways. And their farm system's good. Their big club is good. I mean, they're churning out these championship level teams, and it's because it's baseball, and it's because baseball is the best game, in my opinion, and the most pure game there is, that we haven't seen the Dodgers win year after year after year. It's because, a dribbler down the line is just as effective as a smash, one hopper to the center fielder.
Right.
This is baseball. This is the game.
Right.
And it's ultimately, I believe, and this is why teams like the Guardians can make the playoffs, and teams historically who have had lesser payroll can make it to the playoffs and advance in the playoffs and win 3 out of 5 games or 4 out of 7 games or whatever the case may be. And the Dodgers have definitely in seasons underachieved, because when you're the Dodgers, and this is what comes with being the Dodgers and spending all this money on infrastructure and putting these people into place and having these superstars, the expectation is World Series or nothing. It's win or go. It's win the World Series or failure.
Right.
And so I don't think the Dodgers are ruining baseball, because they are essentially just using, it's kind of like if you and I were to play a board game and we realize, there's no rule that says I can't do this.
Right.
There's no rule that says I can't do this. Now, some people might look at us and go, well, that's not really the spirit of the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
But technically, there's no rule that says I can't do this. So you might make up a rule that says, okay, well, you can't do that now. And this is how, rules evolve and the game changes and blah, blah, blah. But in my estimation, the Dodgers are just doing what every other fan base in the world would want their team to do. And if the Cardinals decided, hey, F it, we're going to throw all this cash at players, I would be in seventh heaven.
Right.
So do I dislike the Dodgers? Of course I dislike the Dodgers. I don't like the fact that they're getting everybody that in free agency. It makes the game less fun. But I don't think that they're destroying the game, because I do think it's, at the end of the day, it's baseball. I do think that, would it shock you this year in the playoffs if the Dodgers are knocked off by, I don't know, the Cubs in the playoffs, if the Cubs make the playoffs? The Cubs have a really good team too now, and there's all these other teams. The Phillies have a good team. Like, they are just giving themselves in a league where every inch matters, every advantage matters. They're giving themselves every single advantage possible.
Right.
And why wouldn't you want to do that? I don't know. That's
And arguably they're paying for it.
yes, yes.
So I get what you're saying. I think that okay. So while you were talking about this, I looked up some bullet points on the luxury tax because neither one of us is experts in any of this, right? The baseball dictionary, because and I don't know when this latest edition came out, but the most recent numbers they have is in the baseball dictionary is 2011. But for the 2024 season this year, the threshold, or this past season, the threshold was $237 million. A record 9 teams exceeded the threshold. The Dodgers, Mets, and Yankees were taxed at a 50% rate because they've exceeded the threshold for 3 or more years in a row. So there you go. Dodgers,
Wow.
Mets,
Wow.
Yankees. Because each year that you exceed it in a row, the rate goes up, right? The Braves and Rangers were taxed at a 30% rate because they exceeded the threshold for a second year in a row. The Astros, the Giants, and the Cubs were taxed at a 20% rate because it was their first time exceeding the threshold, which is why you saw them get rid of Cody Bellinger, right? Because there's a salary dump that happens there. And that's why we have the term salary dump, because we've got to get under the threshold, or we don't want to be over the threshold again, because then it's going to cost a lot more money. There are some clubs, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, that don't care about that. Obviously, they're just going to spend. And maybe that ownership is looking at that from the standpoint of, we're going to do this for a window of time. And then we're going to, but the thing about the Dodgers is, where's the Dodgers farm system right now?
I think it's pretty good. I can double check.
I am pretty sure they're in the top 5. And I
Yeah,
could be wrong on that. But
I'll pull it up right now.
Yep. But so the Dodgers not only have this thing going on where they're paying extra money for the players that they have currently, but they also have a farm system. They've been able to do this, it seems like, year in and year out. And that's where the competitive balance really kind of shifts, in my opinion. If you're able to do both of those things and keep that going for a long period of time, then the danger of those teams commanding the league grows.
Yeah. And Keith Law put out an article January 30th, 2025, so just a couple days ago, as we're recording this on February 1st. Dodgers in his tier 1 of prospect farm systems, they are in tier 1, 3rd overall.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's ridiculous. Number 1 in spending, number 3 in farm system. I mean, and hats off to them for that, right? Because that's just good. That's just good management of a team, I guess, in the big picture. So the threshold for this past season was $237 million. The threshold increases every year. And I don't know what agreement we're under, but this season the threshold is going to be $241 million, so up $4 million from last year.
Gotcha. And I wonder, not to make you go even further with your research project there, but I wonder what happens to that money that teams pay to the. Is it the competitive balance tax? Is that what it's called?
Yep. That's what.
So does that money go to like the Miami Marlins? Like, I don't know.
That is a great question. So it increases. First year's 20%, second year's 30%, next is 50%. There's also a surcharge threshold for clubs that exceed the base threshold by 20 million or more. So there's other percentages for that, and I don't see where that money goes in the research that I'm doing, but I'm going to find that out. I imagine that it goes to balance the league out. So for the lower tier teams like the Miami Marlins, while their payroll may only be, whatever you said it was, 80 million, then they're also getting they're also getting paid to do that in a sense, right? If that's how the competitive um, tax is allocated. I
Gotcha.
find it interesting that they call it a tax. Like the league is able to tax, like
Yeah.
makes it seem like it's going to the federal government, right?
I know. I like if anybody knows where this money goes, because I'm trying to find out where it goes. Does it just go to the league or?
No, get you. Oh, ready for this? The Major
'Cause-
League Baseball, the competitive balance tax money goes to player benefits, retirement funds, and teams that spend less on payroll.
So why would I want to spend more on payroll then? Especially if I'm one of these, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
Like, I don't know.
according to this, the goal of the competitive balance tax is to encourage smaller market teams to spend more and discourage excessive spending.
Well,
Why
it
would a
doesn't seem to
smaller
be doing that.
Well, why would a smaller market team want to spend more if the money that comes from the CBT goes to teams that spend less on payroll? I
Yeah,
mean,
that doesn't make any sense to me
it
either.
almost, I'm not trying to create any stir here, but it's almost like, like a welfare program for
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. No, it does seem like that.
why would I want to go to work if you're going to pay me not to? You know
Yeah,
what
it's yeah, like why would I spend and maybe we have this completely wrong and if somebody wants to
Yeah.
like I'll probably clip this section and there's somebody who can blast us in the chat for not knowing anything. But and just kind of researching this on the fly, but
Let's be clear that that is going to happen because they do know more than us. We're just
yeah,
a couple of buffoons talking about baseball.
that's really it. That's and then
Yes.
we find out these things and we're like, "Wait a minute. What happens? Curiosity that does kill the cat sometimes." But but the point of this is I agree with you. I don't know why if I'm the Miami Marlins and I'm sitting there in my office going, "Wow, the Dodgers, who are in the same division as us, the NL East, or no, they're not. The Dodgers are in the West. What am I thinking? Let's say we're looking up at the Phillies and the Braves and the Mets. All these teams are spending exponentially more than us. We're sitting there going like our ownership group won't even spend $50 million on our payroll, and these guys are spending $250 million going over the luxury tax or competitive balance tax for this second consecutive year, for the third consecutive year, paying 50% tax on their
Overage,
on the yeah,
right?
which is more than we're spending on our entire team if I'm doing the math right. What benefit would it serve us to actually, I don't know, try to maintain a competitive stance with a team like that? Like, the only way that it's possible is if we build up our farm system and churn out talent there. That's the only way that it's possible. But if the Dodgers and the Mets and the Phillies have just as good of a prospect base as we do, because they're able to spend more money and throw more resources at their minor league system than we can, then where does our advantage come from, and what incentive do we have to compete if some of that competitive balance tax money goes to us if we suck?
Yeah, and so here a further breakdown, Seth, of what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking. I find it interesting that of those things that we talked about, the players somehow. So when you sign, who's got the largest contract in baseball right now?
Probably Otani, even though it's a weird contract that pays him like $2 million a year now and like $8,000 million later. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
it's a
and
weird.
so that's another thing that teams have done is they've done this thing that's deferred payment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do those things apply to the competitive balance tax? Because the numbers are not figured until the end of the year, right? And so at the end of this fiscal year, Otani, for example, if he's got deferred money on the books, does that apply to the competitive balance tax or does it not? I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to do a lot more research, but I'm going to say not. Just initial blush, right? That's why you would defer a payment, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't want
I
to.
think
I don't
so.
want it to go on the books for this year because then my tax rate's going to go up, and then But if I'm saying I'm going to spend this on you, Bobby Bonilla style,
Yeah.
in years in the future, then that tax won't apply to me now. And surprise, surprise, the Mets who were in on that. But so here's how, more specifically, how the CBT is distributed. The player benefits, the first $3.5 million of the CBT is used for player benefits. So if I'm a player and Soto gets signed to a $300 million contract that none of it's deferred, that's great because that means that all the other players are going to celebrate that signing because we're going to get more money on our benefits, right? So then retirement funds, okay? Half of the remaining CBT money is used to fund players' individual retirement accounts. So big contract, all right, more money my way. Teams that spend less. The other half of the remaining CBT money is distributed to teams that spend less on payroll. This is done to help smaller market teams compete. And then there's media disruption distribution for those who have a decline in local media revenue, television, all that kind of thing. And then there is a supplemental commissioner's discretionary fund. Okay, now it's starting to rub me the wrong way in a big way, right? Portion of the CBT money is used to reward teams that grow their revenues outside of media. So I guess the commissioner gets to give money to teams that grow their revenue without growing their television revenue. So
I wonder, and to be fair, I wonder how much of a percentage that is.
Well, it just says that a portion of it, because it's interesting to me. According to this, the first 3.5 million is player benefits. Half of the remaining money. So let's just throw a figure out there. $100 million is what the CBT makes, right? Just to be round. So, the first 3.5 million is going to go to player benefits. So what does that leave you with? $96.5 million left. The other half of that money, so what is that? 46 million, 46 and a half, is distributed to teams that spend less on payroll. And then it just says a portion of the money and then a portion of the money. So you've got, there's about half of that money left that can be used to help teams that have had media distribution disruptions. And then half of that money that is up to the commissioner to give to teams who have shown a growth in revenue outside of media.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
A lot of cogs in that wheel. Like, holy cow. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you like to be a
wow.
bookkeeper for the majors?
I bet they stay busy.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
You think Manfred's in there like, how much money can I give to the, I don't know, the Detroit Tigers this year for
I don't know, my sometimes opinions on Manfred, but I do guarantee this, he's wearing a bow tie.
Well, him and Mosaic. Well, honestly, I don't know the last time Mosaic actually wore a bow tie, to be honest.
Who's got the best bow tie in baseball, or used to have?
See, I don't know if I'd have to think of who actually wears a bow tie and who doesn't wear a bow tie. I mean,
Ken Rosenthal. Come on. I mean, Ken Rosenthal, has got the best. Although I don't know that he works for the majors anymore.
He works for the Athletic, doesn't he?
Yeah, MLB Network.
Best bow tie in baseball.
It's got to be Rosenthal. You get that, right?
Oh, wow. How about this?
What?
AI again, so I don't know if you want to believe this or not.
Right.
The Hall of Fame bow tie is a baseball-themed bow tie that supports the preservation of baseball history. It was created in collaboration with Bowtie Cause, an organization that partners with nonprofits to make bow ties and neckties for charitable causes.
Okay.
And then the first name that is brought up is Ken Rosenthal. So, yes, you are right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had that one. More trivia from Mike.
That's right. So, is it time? Is it that time of the show?
Well, it depends on if you're ready to sing or not. Because last time you didn't do any singing.
Well, I will be singing this time.
And I don't need the readers, but I feel like this is a necessary song.
You don't need the readers.
I do.
It's the baseball dictionary segment of the show where Mike pulls out his dictionary.
And there we go. This is it. How about since we're on page 523 where the luxury tax is talked about. How about the lunch hook?
The lunch hook.
The lunch hook. Or it says that it's a synonym of another term, the dinner tong. I've got to go back. Go back now.
How is this? These are just making stuff up now. The dinner tong.
These are
like the tongs, like the tongs that you use to dish out like broccoli or something.
Yeah, the dinner tong. These are references to a player's hand. Tiny Pete's held the ball concealed in his right lunch hook. The Cincinnati Enquirer, July 10th of 1900. Or if you go back to page 257, the dinner tong, historically a player's hand. Blondie Moeller allowed the ball to ooze through his dinner tongs. That was in Baseball Magazine in 1909. So the hands.
This is amazing.
I will forever now refer to my hands. I'm going to put my readers back on now that I'm done reading. As the dinner tongs. Yeah. I like that. Right?
Yeah, between dinner tongs and donkey baseball, the D section in the in the dictionary is pretty good. It's pretty good. Just a reminder for everybody who may just be realizing this podcast, and if you haven't quickly gone away from it yet, donkey baseball on page 263 of the baseball dictionary, a baseball game in which all the players, except for the pitcher and catcher, because apparently it would be the pitcher, catcher, and batter, so all of the fielders not named the pitcher and the catcher, because apparently it would be too hard to do this are mounted on donkeys.
There you go. You are enamored. You have been for quite some time enamored with donkey baseball, and you should try to find where they're going to be playing next.
I pulled up a YouTube clip, and I probably can pull it up right now, of people playing donkey basketball.
Donkey basketball.
Let me see. Hopefully, I don't get a virus by looking this up. Donkey baseball. Let's see if there's any old clips that I can find.
Passed right over the dinner tongs, though. I mean that.
Here we go. Amazing. All right, I know. The dinner tongs is great. So let's see. Let me see. Okay, yeah. Here we go.
You gonna play this?
Yeah, of course. Donkey baseball. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. September 1975.
This was before banana, whatever.
Yeah, this is probably where they got their inspiration from.
Pre-banana ball.
So let's make it full screen.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So I don't know if this is true donkey baseball, but here you go. So we have the donkeys. The kids are riding the donkeys. This guy doesn't know how to ride it.
Oh, no.
He doesn't know how to ride the donkeys. So hit. What? I don't know what's going on here. Oh, he's got to
Oh,
ride the donkey.
He forgot his donkey.
But he can't ride. He can't ride a donkey. He must. He didn't.
What? He's just gonna walk the donkey.
I
Oh,
know.
oh
Like what? I guess you don't have a saddle for a donkey,
my
so you
goodness.
got to hit it, and then you got to get on the donkey.
That takes too much time.
Look at the crowd for
Yeah.
this.
Well, why wouldn't you? There's donkeys.
This is incredible.
Donkeys.
So far, only 2 guys have tried this.
I want to know if anyone's gotten kicked. That's what I want to know. This is
Well, like they're
so,
supposed to be fielding the ball with
so
donkeys, supposedly.
so in order to we have a man. He
This
weighs about
guy's
210
figured it out.
pounds. He's leaning over the side of a donkey that's walking through the middle of the infield.
Oh, let's watch it.
Remember,
1935.
This is a podcast.
Metro Goldwyn Mayer with
Yes.
the Lion donkey baseball, 1935.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not donkey
So
baseball.
No, that's
This
Donkey
what?
What is that?
Oh, this is donkey baseball. Here we
Okay,
go.
here comes donkey baseball in 1935. Again, there's a gentleman walking a donkey out to the field of play. There's a guy sitting on a donkey on third base and second, and there's a line drive out into left center field. And here is the batter getting on the donkey, slapping the donkey in the butt to get him to run. Oh no, wait. The donkeys that were actually in the field and in the infield were the defenders. That was the third baseman and the first baseman. They're on dark donkeys. The other donkey that is being ridden is also, well, okay. They're all just, yep. Oh, my goodness.
Okay. Well,
there were a lot of runs scored in the 12-inning game in which the 2 donkey teams.
How long did this game take?
Right? It was a 12-inning. They're hopping on, and it looks like Grotzky. The donkey's refusing to move. There's a guy kicking his heels, trying to dig the spurs in, and the donkey's trying to get the donkey to go after the ball. He had to jump off the donkey. He got to the end of the reins and he fell. And now he's picking up the ball, and the donkey is being a little stubborn, as donkeys are wont to be. In getting the home plate. So apparently you have to be on the donkey to throw the ball because he had to crawl back on, and the donkey is still just
Wow, that was a photo. That was. I mean, where's replay? No replay in 1935 in donkey baseball.
Pretty sure. Oh, there's a guy. I knew there had to be a clip of somebody getting kicked by a donkey, and there it was.
Oh, and he's got a carrot. Look at this.
A carrot on a stick, trying to motivate the donkey to run.
Is this legal? Can you use outside paraphernalia to motivate the donkey to?
I'm not sure. The typical carrot on the stick in front of the donkey, though, is a unique animal. I wouldn't mind having a donkey at some point. That umpire is way too into the game. He's
yeah.
This is not good podcast material. Hopefully they enjoyed the play-by-play. There's a line drive in the left. The donkey's rounding first, going to second. 1 donkey has scored. 2 donkeys have scored. This looks like it's going to be extra bases. Yes, the donkey's coming in from third. Oh, this could be an inside the park home run, but the ball is being thrown. Here's the throw. Here's the play at the plate. Holy cow, I think he's going to make it. The donkey says, stop right there.
Oh, he can't. Look at the umpire here. The umpire's like getting his ruler out.
Apparently the pitcher has to stay in the pitching box, and he's throwing it home, and the donkey is tagged out. Well, not the donkey, the ass that's on the donkey.
There you go. 15 innings.
Yeah, I don't know what the goal. This is a movie, apparently. I don't know what the goal of this is. All right. Wow. Right. That was too much donkey baseball in my.
I think we had just a touch too much donkey baseball. I apologize for that.
A lot more video than you would have found on the dinner tongs or the lunch hooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, should we? Do we dare look for the dinner tongs?
I doubt it's out there. You're gonna have
dinner tongs.
You're gonna have a lot of editing to do.
I'm just gonna. What do you mean editing? We've. Oh
You're
my
leaving
God.
all this in.
We'll see. I don't know, but I think that's gonna do it. We'll leave it a nice. We went from competitive balance tax to donkey baseball. to bow ties. This is going to be an interesting podcast, the title. Bow ties, donkey baseball, and competitive balance tax.
Bow ties.
Figuring out baseball's greatest issues.
Yeah, don't forget dinner tongs.
And dinner tongs.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen.
after that last
Yeah, that's
piece,
right. That's
sure
right.
A lot of that going on.
Yeah, like, subscribe, click the link in the show description for the podcast. Mike, any final words of wisdom? I think Ryan, there's some real opportunity for Ryan Presley. I don't know how good he's going to be, but I think his walk up song or walk in song from the bullpen has to be like Blue Suede Shoes by Elvis Presley, or pick an Elvis Presley song. It has to be, right?
I like the one from Men in Black, right?
There's an Elvis Presley song from Men in Black.
Oh, absolutely! When they're driving in the car through the tunnel, that's an Elvis song that's being sung. I can't think of the title of it.
I know a classic Mound Visit Elvis Presley song is A Little Less Conversation.
That might be no Promised Land.
Promised Land.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that idea. So anyway, go follow Mike Jones at Mike IA. What's your Twitter handle? I have no idea.
I don't know that I know my own Twitter handle. It's X now, by the way. I don't know if you were aware of that, but they still call it Twitter. And my Twitter handle is at Michael Jones IA.
Michael Jones IA on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Seth_DIEWOLD. You can follow the show on Twitter. Just follow the link in the description. It's Long Live Baseball with one eye, I think. And until next time, you will have to tune into this podcast every week or every other week or how often we do it, because you never know what is going to happen, because I had no idea what was going to happen before we did it. So anyway, for Mike, for myself, go Cardinals.
Let's go Cubbies.
And long live baseball.
Long live baseball.
Thank you.
Hey, long live baseball,
Long
baby.
live baseball. Let's
Go.
go.
Long live baseball.
Thank you.
You got it.
Right now.
Long live baseball.